Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much for making the time to come out here and learn a little bit about getting started with AWS. My name is Kyle Lichtenberg. I'm a solutions architect on the partner team here at AWS. I work with our large partners, some of our multinational enterprises, as well as a lot of our smaller partners, the two-person startups that are really cutting their teeth in the cloud and making big changes in the world with very small teams. Before we begin here, I want to point out a few points to you here. QA panel on your screen, you should see an area where you can ask questions. Some of you have already been using that to figure out some of the logistics of the webinar here. Please feel free to use that at any time. We have a team that'll be answering those questions as possible throughout the webinar, as well as some time earmarked at the end for a deeper Q&A. So if you have any questions about the services or about anything that we discuss here as the webinar is progressing, please feel free to punch those in and we'll do our best to get to them. We're also going to be doing the live Q&A at the end, like I pointed out, and this webinar is going to be recorded. So it's a common question, is this being recorded and can I have the slides? Both of those answers are yes. Once this is complete, it's going to be chopped up for distribution, and we'll be sending those out a few days to a week after the presentation. This is scheduled to run for about an hour. It's going to be about 50 minutes of me talking at you about AWS services, and then hopefully about 10 minutes of Q&A. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. AWS, I'm hoping that most of you are familiar. Quick show of hands, who's familiar with AWS? I'm kidding, I can't see you. We are known for very high-speed innovation. We do our best to innovate on behalf of the customer based on customer input. When customers have challenges or technical problems that they need someone else to help them solve, or if they're solving the same problems over and over again, we do our best to remove some of that undifferentiated heavy lifting from the technical landscape and build out services and features to help them solve those problems. As a result, we've released more than 1,400 new features and services since AWS was released in 2006. Last year alone, we released 516 new features and services. This is a really interesting number because there's only 251 working days in the US in 2014. That means there were more than one service or feature release per day, per working day, in 2014 on the AWS platform. Personally, I find that to be a staggering pace of innovation. And as a result, our customers, they may not use all of these. A lot of them may have nothing to do with their workloads, but some of them will. Someone who's working at AWS right now, deciding what the next feature sets are going to be based on our customer needs, and we're doing our best to deliver those as quickly as possible. We're already up to 234 as of April 30th, feature and service releases for 2015. So we're definitely on track to beat our record for last year. As a result of all this work, we have a very extensive platform. We have services that cover everything from high-level applications like virtual desktops and corporate email, secure file sharing and collaboration. Further down the line, we have analytics services that will handle Hadoop workloads. We have real-time streaming services, data warehousing services, application services around email, whether it's going to be hosted email like our corporate email services with Workmail, or just sending basic SMTP email with our simple email services. We have workflow services. We have one-click web app deployment services. We have administrative and security services covering identity access management, resource utilization and auditing, access controls, access auditing, monitoring and logs, everything that you would expect to find from a cloud services platform, as well as from your own data center that you're used to. We have services available to fill those needs. To back up those services, we have fantastic technical support from our professional services team and our pro support team. We have we have phone support, we have mail support, we have TAM support if you move up to our enterprise tiers where you get a physical engineer that works on your account. We have professional services available. We have training and certification services available. If you decide that this breakneck high-speed run-through of our services was not deep enough to get you where you need to be, we have additional trainings available online as well as in person from our trainings department. We also have solutions architects that are here to help. Whether you're part of the partner network, then one of myself or one of my team would be more than happy to engage with you. Or if you're just a customer coming in to use AWS, we have excellent top-notch resources available to you to help you run your applications effectively and to help you move your applications onto AWS. Underneath all those services, we have our core functionality, our compute infrastructure, our storage services, our content distribution networks and networking services, our database services, which are both available as hosted managed options through RDS, or whatever database you would like to run, however you would like to run it using EC2 and our storage offerings. All of those things are offered to you around the world. We have 11 regions and 27 availability zones available to our customers. If you're not familiar with the terminology, you can think of an availability zone as a independent data center facility. It is a shared nothing piece of infrastructure. It does not share the networking bottlenecks or the power backplane of the other availability zones in a region. So if there is an incident that takes one offline, whether it's an asteroid or attack Godzilla or similar monster that will be able to disable an entire data center simultaneously, it would not impact the other availability zones within that region. So functionally, you get access to a highly durable, highly available data center network that either you as a business or even just you as an individual can go literally right now, enter your credit card information, and start server workloads all around the world with no additional overhead. So we have a lot of services that we're going to dive into here. So I'm going to move pretty quickly because I want to make sure I have time at the end for your specific questions. And like I said, if we do move too quickly and we don't cover something that you're interested in, please type it into the Q&A panel and we'll do our best to get you an answer. So starting with our compute, we're going to look at a few of the high-level services here. This does not cover the breadth of our platform. We're only doing a select core set that seems to be very popular with our customers. If you open up the management console, you will see a staggering number of icons available for you for additional services and things. We're just going to take a look at the core here pretty quickly. EC2, virtual servers in the cloud. This is the core of our services. It is resizable compute capacity. You are renting server instances by the hour. When I say instance, you can think virtual machine. You choose the size of that machine. We've got different templated instance sizes to choose from. There's more than 30 different shapes and sizes. You can scale as your requirements change. So if today you think you need a gigantic server and it turns out tomorrow that all the workload or all the usage died off on that system, or maybe you underscoped and you need a much larger box, you can restart your EC2 instance onto a larger or a smaller sized box and move forward with either more or less power. As you reduce your size, it gets cheaper to run, and we only charge you for the cheaper instances. Everything is on demand, pay as you go. You only pay for what you use. For longer term workloads or for longer term commitments, we also have pricing models for reserved instances, which can give you a significant discount on these instance types. So it's not just for bursty workloads. You can design infrastructure on AWS for standard corporate things like Active Directory servers, which will always be online and running, or things that are going to benefit from the elasticity of the cloud, like websites that may go up in traffic during the day and down at night. To deal with that challenge, we've developed a system called autoscaling. Autoscaling is part of EC2, and it can be used to add or remove instances from your work groups or from your server groups as needed based on metrics that are supplied either by you or by the platform. So for instance, if your website ends up on Good Morning America and suddenly goes from having 15 views a day to 15 million views per day, autoscaling can step in, add the appropriate infrastructure where it's needed behind our elastic load balancers to handle that peak as it's happening. So spin up enough servers to be able to handle the increased traffic. And as that traffic goes away, it can start stepping down that server load as well and removing instances. There's no reason to run the giant fleet once the burst is gone. So we do what we can to help you remove that cost from running that workload so that your customers are happy from a performance standpoint and you're happy from a cost standpoint. This integrates directly with our elastic load balancers, which is a core part of our platform that the load balancers themselves take in the traffic and are able to spread it across multiple instances. They are aware of the health of the instances that are in place, and they're able to distribute that traffic effectively to manage the auto-scaling workloads. Lambda is a newer service that we are very excited about. So Lambda is running code in response to events. This can be a little bit difficult to kind of wrap your head around the first time you kind of think it through. Easy way to look at it, so Lambda functions are being triggered by events in other AWS services. Great example of Lambda, if you upload an image to S3. So you take an image file, you put it in S3. Usually, if you want to resize that image afterwards or do any indexing against that image, you're going to run a service that's going to process a batch job to go scrape out all the image names, run all the resizes, put them back up into different folders, rename them, adjust them, do whatever it is you would need to do to those images that your app or your platform needs for whatever its purpose is. So maybe you're resizing to build out thumbnails so it's easier to display. Instead of running those batch jobs and doing all that scraping and doing all that recursive work, as soon as that image lands, S3 can tell Lambda, hey, an image landed, go ahead and run this process. So Lambda can then take the snippet of code that you uploaded, it will function against that object however it is you told it to. So it can take it, resize it, rename it, move it around, whatever it is it needs to do, and then the Lambda function terminates. So you don't need to pay to run a server to be sitting there and waiting. You don't need to wait to run those batch jobs at the end of the day. You can do this in real time in response to events very cost effectively. You're only paying for the compute that's used when it's used. So that server doesn't sit around idle, your jobs get completed more effectively and more efficiently, and you're able to move forward with your workload without needing to wait on additional processing. Uh, you only need to provide the code. We manage the infrastructure itself. Uh, it's a very revolutionary system. It's changed a lot of very standard designs to become much more flexible. On the same front, you've probably heard of Docker and containers. AWS has an offering called the EC2 Container Services that we announced at reInvent last year. It's a managed service for managing clusters of systems running Docker containers on EC2. It has a built-in scheduler, or you can write your own, or you can use your own third party. It's API driven, just like all of our services, so you're able to integrate however makes sense in your application and in your platform. It integrates with other services like the Elastic Load Balancer and Elastic Block Storage, and there's no additional charge for the container service. So that you pay for the compute infrastructure that you need, but we don't charge you for the management service itself. Next primary section we're going to discuss here, storage and content delivery. Storage is a very big concern for everyone working with any kind of technical workload. There are lots of different types of data, there are lots of different shapes and sizes of data, and there's lots of different access patterns for data that all come into play when you're building any system, let alone building any cloud system. So we're going to take a look at a few of our options here. S3 was our first publicly released service. It is simple storage service. It's scalable storage for the cloud. We bill it as storage for the internet. Basically, you take files, you push them into the S3 service. It will store them for you in a highly durable, highly reliable, secure manner. When I say durable, the durability number actually goes out to 11 nines of durability, which is an incredible level. It is highly scalable. We handle making sure that it is going to be available for you when you request it. We handle making sure that that file is durable and is not going to be missing when you go to request it. And we make sure that that is delivered where you request it, assuming that the access policies say that you can. It's very extensible as far as controlling access. There's lots of different methodologies, whether you want these to be public files or private files, or if you want to encrypt these files, or if you want us to encrypt these files first, or if you want to manage the keys for encrypting these files. Very, very customizable, very extensible, but ultimately very simple. You're storing files and you're retrieving files. It's all the magic that goes around it can get a little bit complex. S3 will let you store any amount of data that you like, anytime, from anywhere on the web. If you need a place to dump your backups, if you need a place to put your object files for your website, if you want to store static websites, if you want to just host an HTML, plain basic JavaScript and HTML driven website out of S3, you can do that as well. Very extensible system. Glacier is S3's cousin. So Glacier is designed for archive storage in the cloud. It's low-cost storage. So in US East, our largest region, S3 runs about 3 cents per gig per month for storage. Glacier runs 1 cent per gig per month. It is secure. It is durable. There's no limit to the amount of data that you store. It's fairly flexible as far as how it's implemented and how it's managed. You only pay for what you use, and it integrates very well with S3. So Glacier's designed, you can think of it kind of like a tape replacement. It's the type of storage that you need to have around, but you don't need to access that data with any regularity. It's great for compliance workloads. It's great for backup archives. I would keep my current set of backups in S3 for quick access, but once those expire out, you can set up a policy in S3 to retire things to Glacier. The reason that I recommend this type of access pattern is because there is a delay when you request data back from Glacier and when it's delivered back to you. So it can take up to 4 hours for that request to be fulfilled. So it's not the kind of data that you want to access now. But if you get a request for compliance or from legal that says we need X data, 4 hours is probably going to be okay for the 66% reduction in cost to store that data long term that you most likely will never need to access. Elastic Block Storage is the other part of our storage story from the EC2 instances. This is off-instance persistent storage. So you can think of this like a SAN. You can choose SSD or magnetic disks. You can take snapshots of that storage to S3, making it durable on the backup side. It supports encryption, both client side and server side. So you can hit a checkbox and we'll encrypt it, or we'll just present to you the box and you can encrypt it however you like. You can also choose to provision your own speed for Elastic Block storage. So if you know that you need 1,000 IOPS on this volume, you can choose a volume and define that it has 1,000 IOPS. There is a cost for identifying that specific speed. Otherwise, it's a um, minimum best effort on a general SLA for the storage speed and access to EBS. Very performant disks, very durable. You can also stripe them together to make gigantic drives and faster drives as well. So you can, for instance, stripe together on some of our larger instances up to 8 and get linear performance increases by using RAID on the front end. It does then get much more complicated on managing that storage from a snapshotting and durability standpoint on your side. We handle making sure that it is redundant on the back end, but taking specific snapshots on the front end, that could be a bit more complicated. EBS is the de facto go-to storage source for your root volumes when you start a new instance, and it's recommended for all of your instances with exceptions for specific use cases. Storage Gateway is a great way to start putting your backup data, or really any data, into the cloud. It integrates on-premise IT environments with our cloud storage offerings. It's presented as a virtual machine that you install in your local infrastructure, and then it will connect with S3, EBS, and Glacier to move your data to the cloud based on specific usage and design patterns. It's compatible with on-premise storage solutions through an iSCSI interface, so it presents a standard iSCSI interface so that you can cache data as well as move that data to the cloud using our Storage Gateway offering. It's secure data transmissions between AWS and your on-premise resources. It'll also function as a VTL, a virtual tape library, so it's a very simple way to start integrating your backup system with AWS. Import-export, if you need to move a lot of data into the cloud or a lot of data out of the cloud, either way, you can physically ship us drives, and we will make sure that data is moved into the infrastructure securely and placed into your account. This is designed for the scenarios where you're moving terabytes and terabytes of data into AWS, and based on maybe your line speeds or just your project timelines, you need it to happen much more quickly than it'll transferring a few megs at a time over your commercial lines on the weekends. It's a great way to jumpstart large data transfers, and it's a great way to move big data sets into AWS as a starting point, and then to do incremental updates against those data sets moving forward. CloudFront is our global content delivery network. There is no platform cost for CloudFront. It is a very simple to implement CDN. You can deliver content with low latency, high transfer speeds, and no commitments. We have 52 edge locations all around the world by our highest commercial or highest bandwidth utilization areas. You can store you can serve both static and dynamic content, and it has very simple integration with other AWS services. So I mentioned earlier that you can serve up websites from S3 by just placing files up there and then adjusting some of the CNAME entries to basically treat S3 as a web server. With a few extra clicks, I think it's actually 5 or 6 total, you can put CloudFront in front of that and take your basic website and have a global distribution of that site for pennies a month. It also supports advanced CDN features like SSL, geographic restriction, and private content. Databases. Chances are, if you have an interesting application, it is going to use a database in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, I would challenge you on the interestingness of that application. RDS, Relational Database Service, DynamoDB, Elasticache, and Redshift are a few of our current database offerings. There are also a few others, but these are the ones that we see customers using most often. RDS, Relational Database Service, is a managed relational database, or a set of managed relational databases. It has a resizable capacity, as well as resizable performance on that capacity. It handles time-consuming administrative tasks. So DBAs, good DBAs, can be very expensive. It is silly to waste their time running backups and patches. They should be working on optimizing tables, building out the right structures, making sure that their storage access patterns are appropriate, making sure all their indexes are doing the right things. We can take all of the undifferentiated heavy lifting off of the plate. We will handle the backups, we will handle the patching, we will handle the high availability. You can choose to deploy into multiple availability zones, giving you multiple servers online simultaneously. We can handle standing up read replicas. We can handle the whole backup story end to end with restores and those types of things. We have high durability options. You can choose multiple engine types. So you can go with MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Oracle. You can use Postgres. And actually, our new service, which is in preview, Amazon Aurora, is a function of the RDS system. And that is a relational database that's MySQL compatible, but designed for the cloud. It's still in preview, so you won't be able to access it right now. But it's going to be giving features like expansive storage that is automatically scaled up and down, both with the storage size as well as the performance capabilities, and a separation between the storage and the compute so that those can be scaled independently. That's really a step forward as far as managing and data in the cloud, specifically on AWS, and kind of driving the features you would expect in a much higher end database down to a much lower cost point. DynamoDB is our NoSQL offering. It is fast, fully managed NoSQL database service. It's predictable, it is scalable, and it's very easy to get started with. It's capable of handling any amount of data. You tell us how much storage you need, you tell us how often you want to read from it and write to it, we stand up the table and present it to you. It's durable, we handle that for you. It is highly available, it runs on many nodes simultaneously. It is all SSD storage. That's important because you get very consistent performance off of DynamoDB. And it's simple and cost effective. You can get up and running in just a few minutes, and the cost is variable directly to the amount of performance that you request. Elasticache is a managed caching service. It's in-memory cache. It supports both Memcached and Redis. It's great to set in front of a relational database to cache queries to improve performance time, or to use as a standalone Redis cluster. Simple resizing through API or console. You can say I need more or I need less, and we'll handle the resizing for you. And it integrates with both CloudWatch and Simple Notification Service for those resizes, as well as for standard performance metrics. Redshift. This is one of my favorites. Redshift is our managed petabyte scale data warehouse offering. Data warehouses traditionally are very expensive to get into. One of my last projects before moving to Amazon was refitting and resetting a data warehousing system. It was millions of dollars in hardware. It was millions of dollars of professional services and setup and backup and testing and all of the fun project pieces. Before we were done out the door, we had months and months and months of work. We had millions of dollars of investment, and we ended up with a data warehouse. On AWS, if you want to start a data warehouse, you can do so for 15 cents. It can be up and running within a few minutes. If you want to go to a larger capacity data warehouse, that's obviously a very small one, you can do that for less than $1,000 per terabyte per year. That includes your compute, that includes your storage, that includes your backup, that includes your licensing for that engine. That's everything, end-to-end managed for that data warehousing product. This is a great product for helping smaller businesses compete that maybe don't have the budget or don't have the resources of much larger enterprises. And it's also a way of making much larger enterprises more agile. If you're in a position where you're already running a data warehouse and maybe you want to do some what if stuff, maybe if you want to play around and bring in some analysts and let them do their research on the data warehouse, but you don't want that to impact your daily reports that everyone's going to be expecting from you. So you can clone your data warehouse. You can stand up another copy for a day or two and only pay for it for that day or two. It's all usage-based services. It's ODBC and JDBC compliant, continuous backup. Everything that is written to the database gets written to multiple nodes and stored durably by us. You can scale with no downtime. It does not take your system offline to scale when you add additional nodes. And it's online and functional in minutes. Redshift is a fantastic product that I highly recommend taking a look at. Next section is networking. So we're going to talk through VPC, our virtual private cloud offering, Elastic Load Balancers, which I mentioned earlier, Route 53, our DNS service, and Direct Connect as well. So VPC, our virtual private cloud, lets you define isolated cloud resources. It lets you build your virtual network in the cloud. You get to define your subnets, you get to define your IP address ranges, you get to choose your ACLs and your NACLs, you get to choose your security group layouts, you get to choose your access patterns and your routing tables, you get to choose whether it's going to have internet access or not, and whether it's going to have VPN access back to your data center or to another location or not. You get to choose whether or not it's going to have direct connect attached as well. You can peer these VPCs with other VPCs, both in your own AWS account and within other accounts within the same region. So if you have a development VPC, a staging VPC, and a production VPC, you can use those as separate functional entities. They will not know about each other unless you tell them about each other and build peering relationships between them. They can function completely independently from access standpoint. They can run completely separate services and systems, but they're all owned and managed by you. You get to define what all of that looks like. We offer, from a VPN perspective, hardware terminated VPN connections within your VPC. So we're more than happy to terminate the VPN connection for you using IPsec standards. which you can then connect out to your local data center or your local office. We actually will also build out configurations for common routers and firewalls as well, whether it's the Cisco's and Junipers and Palo Altos. We have a script that will automatically generate those using that connection data. Or if you prefer, you can run your own. So if you don't want to run the ones that we have, you can either start your own instances and run open source products or commercial products that you've purchased to handle these types of connections. Or you can launch right out of our marketplace. If you're a Cisco shop, you can launch their cloud services router directly from our marketplace with just a few clicks, have it up and running in your VPC, and handle all your networking using that product as well. Route 53 is our scalable DNS and domain name registration service. So it is DNS, if you're familiar. It's domain name lookup. It translates names into IP addresses. Uh, it answers DNS queries with low latency using a global network of DNS servers. The servers are durable and redundant. Latency-based routing is an option to find the closest AWS endpoint. Integrates very easily with other AWS services, allows you to register domain names, does some fairly high-end health check options as well. Types of things you would expect from a much more expensive service are pushed in there because they're functionally not terribly difficult to do. They're just typically exclusive. So Route 53 kind of brings that down, the high-end functionality with least latency routing and health checks and global geolocating, those types of features, and provides them to our customers at a much lower cost point than you would find elsewhere. It's a fantastic service. I'm a huge fan of Route 53. It's one of those services that's not terribly well understood. If you get it, you realize that it is required for everything that happens on the internet. And if you don't, then I would highly recommend taking a look at DNS functionality in general and how important it is to your day-to-day life. ELB, Elastic Load Balancers. These are a huge feature on our platform. There are lots and lots of Elastic Load Balancers running. They're a very simple way to get load balancing up and running across multiple instances, which is kind of a core to the tenets of cloud technology, being able to scale up and down. This is one of the primary points that allow that scale to happen. It's a load balancer that supports HTTP, HTTPS, TCP traffic to EC2. Detects and removes failing instances. So it will do health checks against instances in your group based on health checks that you define. Dynamically grows and shrinks based on traffic. So as more traffic hits the ELB, it will resize itself at no additional cost to you, the customer, to be able to handle that traffic for your customers. And once it stops getting that amount of traffic, it will scale itself back down as needed, again, with no changes and no visibility of that to you. It always runs in a highly available, highly durable manner. So you will only see a CNAME for your load balancer. We will handle everything else underneath that to make it happen. It is very, very cheap. It integrates with our auto scaling and is large, I won't say required for auto scaling, but is definitely the best way to get the best set of features or best set of functionality out of the features of auto scaling is by using elastic load balancers. Very easy to get started with, just a few clicks. Again, it's another one that I recommend. If you're looking for other options for load balancing, maybe you need layer 7 inspection or something like that. We also have partners in our marketplace at the AWS marketplace, and you can find people like F5 and Cisco that also have devices in there, Citrix's NetScalers as well, that you can launch into your VPC and run similar to the way that you are today. But I would highly encourage you to see if the Elastic Load Balancer will fit your needs. It's very simple to manage and very, very cost effective. Direct Connect. This is dedicated network connections to AWS. This lets you physically connect between your data center and the Amazon network. It is a private line that's connected through that cross connect. It offers consistent network performance. It reduces bandwidth costs for high volume data transfers and lets you choose your speed anywhere between 50 megabits per second and 10 gigabits per second per port. So if you want to have 40 gigabits per second, you can have 4 ports connected to AWS for private connectivity between one of our peering locations and your infrastructure. You can find the list of peering locations on the website, but it's a great way to get a dedicated channel if you're going to be doing very high volume throughput. And if you're not going to be doing very high volume throughput, but you're still looking for Direct Connect, we also have a partner network around Direct Connect that can sell you sub 100 megabit lines for Direct Connect to get you the connectivity you're looking for without needing to invest in the much larger equipment to terminate it. Another big value to the AWS platform, one of my favorite pieces, is our simple services. So these application services, SES, SNS, SQS, Cloud Search, Elastic Transcoder, and Simple Workflow, they are what we look at as undifferentiated heavy lifting. It is a set of services that everyone does pretty much the same way. And we've just found a way to do it programmatically so that you don't have to. And let's take a look at the first one here so you can see what I mean. So simple email services. Sending of email is something that is very well understood. There are some slight variations to it. There are some companies that do very great things around marketing emails. There are some that do very great things around tracking emails. That's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is literally sending bulk email. When somebody goes to your workflow and completes your shopping cart, you need to send them an email that says, "Thank you for shopping with us. Here's what you ordered. Here's when it's going to ship." There's no great reason that you need to run a fleet of email services to make that happen. SES is very cost-effective bulk transactional email sending services. It eliminates the server management. You can talk directly to our APIs or to our SMTP gateways and send that email without, again, needing to run all of those servers, patch all of those servers, manage all of those servers. It meets the rigorous standards that are important to maintain a uh, clear blacklist loop, so they will not be blacklisted servers. They are very well respected. It's the same mail infrastructure that Amazon.com uses. There's also a built-in feedback loop for successful and unsuccessful messages, so we'll let you know if the email bounces or if it was successfully delivered. Very similar, simple notification service. The way that you send notifications to other pieces of your infrastructure, whether it's pub sub or using a distributed fashion, it's very well understood. Notification buses are a very common thing, and it follows itself all the way down to mobile push. Pushing a message to an iPhone, to an Android device, to a Windows mobile device, everyone does that pretty much the same way. Simple notification service is just a simple way to do that. Instead of standing up your own infrastructure and building out your own systems, just call our APIs, and we'll be happy to handle the delivery and the responses for you. Simple queuing service, it's the same story again. There's definitely some differentiation in high-end queues if you're talking about high-performance compute systems and some edge cases that need very, very, very low latencies, which may not be realistic. Simple queuing service, really, really simple service. You put a message into the queue, you pull messages out of the queue. It'll handle basic things like dead letter queues and delivery notification queues. You only pay for what you use. It's highly available, highly durable. The cost is silly. It ends up being something like a femto penny per queued object. The comparison between running multiple queuing servers throughout the month versus a few dollars worth of SQS ends up being a very, very easy solution for a lot of our customers. Cloud Search, again, it's a simplified service. It's a managed search service, so it integrates very easily with existing applications using our APIs the same way that our other platform functions do as well. It scales automatically. We handle the hardware provisioning, the data partitioning, and the software patches. You provide the metadata and then use the API to query against it. Elastic Transcoder. Transcoding video is a very common workload. With Elastic Transcoder, you can put your video into S3. You can tell us what the output format's supposed to be, where to find it, where to put it when it's done. We will handle scaling up a server farm to do that transcoding for you, pulling it right out of S3 and distributing it back to you into a separate S3 bucket. Very simple service, very easy to wrap your head around, and a great way to simplify life if video transcoding is not your business. If it's something you need to do, but it's not something that you do as a business, Elastic Transcoder is a fantastic option. Simple workflow service. Again, same theme, same general theme here. It's a workflow service to coordinate processing steps across distributed systems. It manages workloads, including states, decisions, executions, tasks, and logging, and ensures that those tasks are executed reliably, in order, and without duplication. It uses simple API calls and can be executed from code, either within your application itself, from the command line, or using the administrative console. There are fancier versions of this type of software available with much deeper features, also available in our marketplace and from third-party vendors. But if you just need a simple workflow, the simple workflow service can get you where you're going. All right, administration and security. So security is the most important discussion that you can ever have around cloud technologies. And we provide a lot of tools to make sure that our customers feel secure and have the right tooling in place to handle the proper administration of their environments. Directory service, these are managed directories in the cloud. It's compatible with Active Directory. It can be a standalone directory service or integrated with existing directories. So it can function either as a replica of your existing Active Directory service, or it can do a reach through for a proxy. It integrates with Zocalo, actually I should say WorkDocs, we had a name change there. our identity and access management system, as well as workspaces and workmail. The directory can also be attached to from EC2 instances. So if you want to connect your Windows machines to it, or even your Linux machines for directory services, it can handle both of those functions. Identity and access management. There's a little bit of confusion between these two items. So identity and access management is access control for the AWS platform. This is where you create users, groups, and roles that allow access to the AWS infrastructure. This is different from your cloud directory, which is where your end users would live. So these are the users in identity and access management that are allowed to do things to the AWS infrastructure. So if you have admins that are allowed to start services, or if you have users that are allowed to stop and start instances or load data into S3, identity and access management is what's going to control that. If you have users that are logging into your application specifically to do things, they're going to be in a different directory service. Identity and access management can be federated with other systems. It can be used to manage some encryption keys. It can be used to set very granular permissions and controls. With your users, with your groups, you can say that they're allowed to access specific services, specific API calls from specific services, only specific instances that have a certain tag assigned to them. You can be very, very granular and provide the right level of access with the minimum security threat level to any of the users who need direct access to the infrastructure itself. Trusted Advisor, our AWS Cloud Optimization Expert. So Trusted Advisor has saved our users literally millions of dollars since its launch. It checks your AWS account for cost optimization, performance optimization, fault tolerance, and security red flags. It's in no way a comprehensive tool to tell you that you have all these things in a perfect state, but it checks a lot of basic general things that we see customers make mistakes on. It checks for instances that are running all the time and are idle and have too much horsepower. It checks for volumes that have not been snapshotted. It checks for applications that may not be set up in a fault-tolerant manner. It checks to make sure you don't have any security red flags with groups or security groups that have too many permissions assigned to them. There's a basic tier to this that does some basic free checks. With business level support, it unlocks all of the checks. It is a great tool to just do a good once-over on your platform, and a continuous once-over at that, to make sure that you've got no giant glaring red flags in place. CloudTrail. This is user activity and change tracking. This records every API call from your account. This includes API calls made from the console. Each click in the console is also an API call. It reports those to log files and stores them in S3. This enables security analysis. So you're able to go back and look at what was changed, when it was changed, what was called. This is important to maintain the compliance side of the story that's on the customer's plate. So we handle compliance in the cloud up to the hypervisor level. Compliance of the cloud, reporting against that and maintaining those certifications on your side will need additional data. So this data is available for forensic usage if you see something went wrong and you want to go figure out what it was, or if you just need to provide your spot audit checks and those types of things. There's support for most of the AWS services, and it's continuing to expand its base. CloudWatch is our resource metering and application monitoring service. This gives you visibility into your utilization, your operational performance, and the overall demand patterns on your infrastructure. There are basic metrics that are built in. It'll tell you things like your CPU level, the amount of storage that's in place, the network in and out on your instances, but you can also add custom metrics if you want to add things that are specific to your application, or if you want to add thread counts from specific DLLs that are or specific services that once they get to a certain point, I need to scale up or scale down. You can use those as triggering methods to start your scaling events. You can also use this for log aggregation with CloudWatch logs. You can run an agent on your systems and ship your system logs off to CloudWatch, and then also do searching and reporting against those as well. AWS Config, this is resource configuration and inventory. It keeps track of everything that's running in your account and sends a notification when things change. So we have a lot of customers and a lot of partners that wrote scripts that would continuously scrape and do describes, we call them, of everything that's in their infrastructure, store that in a local database, do a comparison, and then identify if anything has changed so that they can maintain a consistent state and identify what the current state of their infrastructure is. AWS Config basically does this for you. Instead of needing to continually scrape and look for changes, it will just notify you of changes when they're made. So you'll get a general baseline of where things are when you first start it up, and then as things change, it will keep a history of those changes and it will notify you when those events are triggered. It also integrates very well with partner solutions. We have a lot of monitoring and application platforms that run on AWS. available both from our marketplace and from vendors who are not available in marketplace, that integrate very well with AWS config. Next stop here, deployment and management. And we're getting pretty close to time here, so we're going to keep moving along pretty briskly. And again, if you have questions, feel free to push those into the Q&A panel. And if we do not get to your question during this, we'll make sure to follow up and get you the answers that you're looking for. So our deployment and management story follows a little bit of a gradient here. So up the top, we've got Elastic Beanstalk, which is pretty hands-off. You push us an application, we handle setting up the infrastructure and hosting that application. When you're done with it, you can tear it down. You can increment against that code base if you like, but we handle most of the automation and most of the hosting function. OpsWorks is hosted chef, basically. We give you a little more control. You define the cookbooks, you define what the infrastructure is going to look like. We manage running that infrastructure and maintaining that infrastructure from a functional standpoint, from an architectural standpoint. CloudFormation is even a little more nitty-gritty. It is a language that you can use to just define what your infrastructure looks like. If you look at these kind of as a gradient from top to bottom here, Elastic Beanstalk would be the lowest touch version where you just give us an app, and CloudFormation would be the heaviest touch version where you're defining all of your parameters and all of your variables and all of the build scripts. And getting much more nitty-gritty into the effects. And there's different use cases for each of these. Some developers don't want to know what a server is, doesn't believe load balancers really exist, only knows what's happening in their text editor, and that's the final version of truth, and that's fine. For some people, go ahead and push that into Elastic Beanstalk, and we'll take care of all the backend magic. If you feel that you need to adjust every single variable and make things hum just the right way, CloudFormation is going to be more your approach. And we'll take a little bit deeper look at those. So Elastic Beanstalk is ideal for developers that simply want to upload their code and have the service manage the rest. It supports Docker, Java, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, and Ruby right now. It automatically handles all of the deployment, all the load balancing, all of the auto-scaling, and the application health monitoring. You still retain full control over those resources. So if you stand up Elastic Beanstalk and then decide that you don't want to use it anymore, you can actually detach the Elastic Beanstalk management engine from the environment and just keep the resources in place. OpsWorks is DevOps application management in the cloud. It deploys, operates, and automates applications. It models the layers of your application into stacks. It uses chef recipes and cookbooks. It has some pre-built templates for standard PHP, Ruby, Java, and Node.js type apps. Very granular security controls. So using IAM, you can identify who has access to which of the tiers and which of the stacks. You can use OpsWorks both in your AWS infrastructure as well as connecting it to your on-premise infrastructure to have one pane of glass to manage these things. And CloudFormation, templated AWS resource creation. So model, provision, and update AWS resources in JSON formatted text files. You can deploy that stack from the template with runtime parameters, which means you can reuse this template. So if you build out, and we have actually great examples of this in some of our white papers, let's say SharePoint as your application of choice, and you need to deploy SharePoint in 10 different customer locations. You can build out one giant template that knows how to deploy SharePoint, reuse that with some runtime variables to customize for each of your customers, and knock that out over a series of hours instead of over a series of weeks. There's a fantastic white paper on specifically SharePoint available on the website that has those types of templates built in. Code Deploy. This was recently announced. It's automated deployments on the cloud. So it automates deployments of software to EC2 instances. It allows for rolling updates and health checks during those updates. It's platform and language agnostic. It will run any language that you like. We're just sending along the commands to the servers themselves. It integrates with existing tool chains, so it's very open from an API perspective. It doesn't have to replace your existing tooling. It can just augment it. And this is another one, you can use it either just on AWS or also use those agents on-premise and have them call out for code updates there as well. Analytics, we're going to move through this pretty quickly here. So EMR, Elastic MapReduce, this is our hosted Hadoop framework. There is no hardware or virtualization software for you to install, update, run, or manage. It runs in your own VPC. It is very secure. It reduces the operational overhead of running MapReduce workloads exponentially. It takes it from a very drawn-out process to build and set up and get these clusters running to just a few minutes of clicking and waiting to get your MapReduce workloads up and running very quickly, very effectively. It integrates with our other AWS services. It likes to pull its data in from S3 and push it back out to S3 when possible. It also integrates well with our spot market. So you can use our on-demand instances as well as our spot instances to get better performance out of your workloads at a lower price point. Amazon Kinesis, it's used for real-time processing of streaming big data, or really any size data. It's fully managed. It's real-time processing. It pulls in streams at any scale. So if you need to pull in 1 meg per second or a terabyte per second, it can scale to handle those workloads. It integrates with S3, DynamoDB, and Redshift. You can also build custom applications on top of that Kinesis data. So on the back end of Kinesis, once it brings in that stream, you can have multiple applications reading from that stream and taking action against those data points that are coming in simultaneously. Data Pipeline is an orchestration product for data-driven workflows. It's to move data around different AWS and compute resources. It's good for transferring and transforming data between specific databases or specific locations, and it can also be integrated with on-premise data sources. Amazon Machine Learning builds smart applications quickly and easily. So it is guided creation of machine learning models. This is a very recent announcement. It can pull triggering data from both S3 and from Redshift, and it can do these functions and provide you this feedback both in batch models or in real-time predictive models. So you can feed it data as a streaming function or as a batch function, and it can respond to you appropriately, either giving you back batch sets of data on a schedule or real-time predictions for use, say for instance in your online shopping carts, to be able to predict what other customers would want to see or what other products a customer would be interested in. You can do that in real-time prediction. Or if you want to plan out for the next year's progress on purchasing and such, you can do much longer, larger batch processing jobs. Amazon Workspaces, virtual desktops in the cloud. Create and manage virtual desktops for your users. Usually running virtual desktop infrastructure is not super duper fun. This makes it much simpler. It integrates with your VPC and directory service, so these workspaces run within your private virtual private cloud. There are clients for Windows, Mac, iPad, Kindle Fire, and Android. I'm personally a big fan of the service. I use it literally every day. It runs very well. It's very durable. It's very easy to use. It's a great option for virtual desktops. If you're already running virtual desktops, this can take a lot of the headache of that undifferentiated heavy lifting off your plate. If you're not currently running virtual desktops and you're in a either high compliance or a high regulatory industry, it might be an option to consider. We're seeing a lot of uptick both with healthcare type workloads as well as in industries where keeping the data in the data center is very important to the customer. WorkDocs, secure enterprise storage and sharing services. You can share documents with other users, receive feedback, and trigger workflow options. It integrates with your existing corporate directory. It integrates with desktops, laptops, tablets, workspaces. This is a phenomenal service. I'm a huge fan of this one as well. I use this one every day. We use it on our team for sharing documents and for getting feedback on those documents. It keeps those all available in the web browser, so you don't need to open up your full, let's say, Word application to view all these comments and review these things. You can pull out your phone and see these comments and review other people's documentation while you're riding on the bus just as well as you can from your laptop. And then you can also sync those documents down to your local system or to your workspace if you're using workspaces as well. When you save those items or when you edit those items locally, they are synced back up to the server using Workspaces or WorkDoc Sync. And it builds a very nice ecosystem and really puts your data where you want it to be and where you need it to be so that you can function against that data more effectively. Workmail, secure email and calendaring service. Managed business email and calendaring services, enterprise-grade security. Everything is encrypted end-to-end, so it's encrypted in transit, it's encrypted in storage. It is Outlook compatible, and the same ability here to access it from anywhere. It has a great web client as well. This is a very cost-effective way to get enterprise-grade email systems up and running very quickly and very easily. Okay, so I'll take a breath. We went through a lot of information there. Go ahead and take a second, let it all sink in. If you've got questions in the Q&A panel, we're going to start picking through those.